On the pasuk v'haboy reik ein boy moyim, this is the pasuk referring to when Yosef is thrown into a pit. The Torah describes it as an empty pit without any water. We find in the Gemara in the Sugya of Chanukah that v'amar Rav Kahana dorash Rab Nosson bar Manyumi in the name of Rab Tanchum. What does the pasuk mean when it says v'haboy reik ein boy moyim? If the pasuk says v'haboy reik, that the boyer is empty, don't I already know that there's no water? So why does it say there's no water? It's coming to imply something. There was no water there, but there was something else there. There were snakes and scorpions in the pit. Now, simply, the fact that the Gemara is bringing this drasha about the V'haboy Reik in the Sugya of Chanukah is because this drasha is being said by the same Mandam or by the same Amoira that said the previous drasha. Amar Rav Kahana, Dorash Rab Nosson bar Manyumi, Mishmei Rab Tanchum. So first it says one halacha regarding the halachas of Chanukah, about a Neir Shel Chanukah, and then it continues from the same Mandam or about this V'haboy Reik. But as discussed many times, every single thing in Torah is betachlis adiyik, is completely precise. And therefore when the Gemara brings a drasha in a particular sugi, it's not only because of some side connection, like in our case it happens to be the same person that said both statements, but rather that the drasha has a more inner connection to the sugya where it's being brought. From this we understand also to apply this in our case, that there must be a connection in toichen and content between this statement about V'haboy Reik with the idea of Chanukah. Especially based on what the Shalah writes in the beginning of our parsha, that the parshas of Vayeshev, Miketz, Vayigash have a connection to Chanukah. And this pasuk, of course, V'haboy Reik ein boy mayim, is a pasuk in Parashat Vayeshev, so it must be connected to the idea of Chanukah. Chazal tell us, as a general statement, ein mayim elo Torah, that water is Torah. And from this we understand, when the Torah speaks about mayim, it's also hinting to Torah. So to apply that now to our case, and especially in our case, on the pasuk V'haboy Reik ein boy mayim, we actually have a clear medrash. The Medrash says that it's speaking about Torah. The Medrash says boy reik means that the boyer of Yaakov was emptied out. It doesn't have Torah. Torah that's compared to water. As we'll see later in the Sicha, this is referring to that the children of Yaakov weren't acting in accordance to Torah. Says the Rebbe, so this is now also the inner meaning of this Maimer Chazal when we say that there's no water in the pit, but that there were snakes and scorpions. Especially, says the Rebbe, actually in the Medrash, these two Pirushim are brought together, one following the other. It brings both things. First of all, the thing from the Gemara, the same as the Gemara, that there's no water, but there's snakes and scorpions. And secondly, what we just mentioned, that there's no water, meaning that there's no divrei Torah there. So what's the connection between these two things? Because when one is in a state of ein by divrei Torah, that doesn't have the words of Torah, ein by mayim, which is Torah, then automatically there's negativity, there's nechashim v'akrabim, snakes and scorpions. There is no in between. That means the lack of divrei Torah is not only that now you're empty, you don't have Torah, and you may be filled with other things, mundane things, neutral things, but rather, if your boyer is empty of Torah, then automatically there's nechashim v'akrabim, there's snakes and scorpions, things that are against Kedusha. The Rebbe says this is similar to a pirush of the Baal Shem Tov. On the pasuk v'sartem v'avadetem, the pasuk says v'sartem v'avadetem l'kim acherim, which simply means you'll turn and serve other gods. Says the Baal Shem Tov, v'sartem means the moment a person turns away, he separates himself from Hashem Yisbarech, then automatically there's v'avadetem, he's serving avodah zarah, that there's nothing in between. Says the Rebbe, now we can also understand why the Torah doesn't even have to say clearly that there were snakes and scorpions in it. We learn it as a result from the fact that there's no water. Because again, this is something that doesn't even have to be specified, that there are snakes and scorpions. That there are snakes and scorpions is a result. The fact that there's no water, this automatically causes the negativity, the snakes and scorpions. And this is also why the Medrash brings these two Pirushim one after the other, following one from the other. Because one Pirush, one interpretation, is dependent and explained by the other. The fact that there are Nechashim v'akrabim is a result from the fact that ein by mayim, that there's no divrei Torah. And that's actually why it leads to something that's against the Torah, the fact that they go and sell Yosef. The Rebbe says, seemingly we could ask, we can understand by the Pirush of the Baal Shem Tov of V'sartem V'avadetem, since we're speaking about the actual bond and connection of a Yid to Hashem. So it can be understood that the moment there's a Vesartem, the moment someone turns away from his connection to Hashem, automatically there's the opposite, that there's Va'avadetem, he's involved in things that are against Hashem. Even Avodah Zarah, at least Avodah Zarah in a subtle way. Foreign Avodah. But in our case, if we're speaking about the lack of Torah, the lack of Mayim, why do we have to say that just because there isn't Torah, automatically there is a Metzias of Nachashim V'Akrabim, of snakes and scorpions, something that's against the Torah? Another thing we need to understand, it's known that the brothers of Yosef were of the opinion that Yosef was Chayiv Misa. They considered him someone that was plotting to kill them, and therefore he has a din of a roidev, someone that's trying to kill somebody else. According to Torah, you're allowed to kill him. Or for other reasons that the Mefarshei Torah discussed. But the bottom line is that they were convinced that according to Torah, they had the right to kill him. If that's the case, why is the Medrash saying that by killing Yosef, this is connected with what we said before, the Medrash that we brought before, Nisroikin Boire Shel Yaakov, the Boire of Yaakov doesn't have the very Torah that the children are not, it sounds like that the Shvatim are Chaz v'Shalom not taking into consideration the words of Torah, where in fact, according to their opinion, they're acting according to the din of Torah. Says the Rebbe, we're going to understand this by first prefacing the reason why Chazal compare Torah to water. Torah generally is compared to a number of things. It's compared to bread, compared to wine, compared to oil, and so on. Each one of these is clearly describing a different characteristic of the Torah. What about water? Why is it compared to water? So Chazal say that the reason Torah is compared to water is to tell you that just like water leaves a high space to go down to a low place, so to Divrei Torah only last and only endure in a person that is humble. In other words, Mayim is not describing Torah itself, but rather describing the humility that the person has to have when he's learning Torah. Now we can understand what the Medrash is saying, that the Boyer of Yaakov became emptied. There's no Divrei Torah, meaning to say that they did have Torah, the Shvatim, and the dinim of the Torah. We just asked before why are we saying that the Boyer is empty of Torah if they're trying to act according to Torah. Because the problem was, what's lacking is the Mayim Shebet Torah, the water, the humility of the Torah that they're supposed to have together with the Torah. In other words, according to their high level, they should have had a greater level of humility. This idea that according to one's high level, he needs more humility is understood. From a halacha, we know that when we bend our knees by Shemona Esrei, so usually we bend our knees by Baruch, and we make sure that we're standing upright for Hashem's name. But a king, a melech, once he bends his knees in the beginning of Shemona Esrei, needs to remain bent down the whole Shemona Esrei, because again, he needs a greater measure of bittul. Says the Rebbe, but now our previous question actually becomes stronger. That is, if we're saying that the Shvatim had Torah, what's missing is the idea of the bittul. So the question that we had before, that we said that as soon as there's no water, automatically there's Nachashim V'Akrabim. So how do we now understand that just for the fact that the person is lacking the bittul, that humility, that's why automatically you're saying there's Nachashim V'Akrabim, there's automatically snakes and scorpions, opposition to Torah? How do we understand this? Says the Rebbe, the explanation is, the main thing of Torah is that through Torah, through learning Torah, one connects with a nois in HaTorah, the giver of the Torah Hashem. And therefore, bittul, humility, is such a crucial condition. As long as a person is a metzias, an entity for himself, then automatically he's limited by those limitations that a nivra, that a creature has, that a created being has, and therefore it's not capable to connect to the nois in HaTorah, to the giver of Torah, who's completely infinite. It's only when a person is standing with complete bittul, with complete humility, and it's completely nullified, then he's going out of his own limitations and his own definitions. That's when he could connect with the true bligvul of the nois in HaTorah of Hashem. With this, we'll also understand what we say in the end of Shemoneh Esrei. We say, "V'nafshi ka'afar la'koil tiyeh, psach libi b'soyrosecha." How do these two things follow from each other? What's the connection? My soul will be like dust to everyone. Open my heart in your Torah. In fact, the question is seemingly the other way around. Limud Torah, to learn Torah, psach libi b'soyrosecha, has to be with a koch, with an excitement, with understanding, using your intellect, which is all only possible when one's koiches, one's faculties are standing in a metzias. The nafshi ka'afar la'kol tiyeh is negating, is nullifying the person's metzias. Seemingly this is a contradiction to be able to koch, to be able to have an excitement, enthusiasm, understanding in Torah. But the answer is, because when we're speaking about Psach Libi B'Soirasecha, we want that Hashem should open our hearts in Hashem's Torah. When could a person be a keli, a vessel, to receive Hashem's Torah, which is completely unlimited? It's only when the person first has that absolute bittul. Not only regular bittul, but as it says, nafshi ka'ofar la'koil. It's completely like dust to everyone. And what is dust? Everyone's stepping all over it. And through this bittul, that's the way he becomes a keli to be able to receive the Torah of Hashem. Then, of course, will come the Yagaito, his toil and his effort with his intellect. He'll be able to then receive the Torah of Hashem into and through his inner koiches, psach libi b'soirasecha. Says the Rebbe, with this we're going to understand something that seems to be a question, a wondrous thing that we find regarding Limud Torah, and that is that Dibur, verbalizing Torah, has a certain advantage even over understanding Torah. Where do we see this? Says the Rebbe, the halacha is that a person that's just thinking the words of Torah doesn't have to make the bracha of Birchas HaTorah, because hirur, thinking, is like dibur, it's not like speaking. Another thing that we learn is that whatever a person learns just by thinking, and he's able to verbalize it and he doesn't say it, that he's actually not yoytze the obligation of the mitzvah of limadet hamoisam. Furthermore, even the understanding of Torah is connecting with verbalizing and saying the words of Torah. Chazal say on the pasuk, Chayim heim l'moitzeim, the Torah is a life. L'moitzeim simply means to those that find Torah. Say Chazal, don't read it l'moitzeim, but rather l'moitzeim. L'moitzeim means to those that let it out of their mouths, to those that verbalize the words of Torah. The Gemara says, Imarucha, if the Torah is arranged not only in your mouth, in all of your Eivarim, in all of your limbs, that's the way Torah is going to be secure by you. It's going to be guarded. And if not, Torah won't last by the person. How do we understand this? Seemingly, when a person is saying the words of Torah Shabbat Peh, he doesn't understand what he's saying, the Psak Din Shulchan Aruch is that it's not considered learning at all. That means the idea of learning by Torah Shabbat Peh consists of the fact that you need to understand what you're learning. So why would it be that in this kind of learning, that verbalizing, saying the words of Torah should be so important to the extent that if it's missing, not only do we say you don't have to make a bracha, and that you're not yoytze the mitzvah of limadet hamoisam, but that eina mishtameris, it's not even guarded by the person. In other words, that even the understanding of the Torah by the person doesn't last. So the explanation goes back to what we said, that the main idea of Torah is the connection that one has through Torah with the noiser Torah, with the one who gave the Torah, with Hashem. And therefore, when a person is learning the Torah, it has to be in a way that the understanding of the matter is not coming just based on the seichel of the person himself, but as it is from Hashem, Torah shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is how we'll understand now that it's not enough just even having bittul as an introduction to the learning of Torah, but the learning itself has to be in a way of bittul. And this is why the limud has to be, as we said, the learning has to be l'moitziyayim b'pei, you have to verbalize it. And it has to come into all of your amach evarim. Why? Because when a person is learning Torah only with his intellect, which is the greatest milah, the greatest quality the person has, but that means that the person is still remaining very much in his mitzias, in his existence. He's remaining an entity as a person, and therefore he cannot absorb the Torah of Hashem. The Rebbe says this is a kal v'chomer of trying to put an elephant through the eye of a needle. And the Rebbe says the logic goes like this: if an elephant, which is limited, and yet because the eye of the needle is smaller than it, it's completely out of the question that it should be able to go through the eye of the needle. In fact, this is something that one doesn't even see this in his dream. How much more so Torah, which is connected to Hashem. Sha'ashuei HaMelech ba'atzmusei, this is the very delight of Hashem in his very essence. The true bligvul. So certainly it's impossible for it to be able to be grasped and absorbed in the intellect of a finite person. And therefore we say, on its own, if you're not going to verbalize it, eina mishtameres, there's no way it could last by the person, as a person is with his limitations. And as the Gemara actually tells over there about a Talmud that was learning quietly, he wasn't saying the words out loud and he was forgetting his learning. But when a person connects the learning with his mouth, he verbalizes the words, And even lower than that, Ramach Evarim, he makes sure it penetrates the rest of his body, which are lower than Seichel. It's lower than the Maila, than the high qualities of the person. In other words, the learning is in a way that the person is going down from his great high pedestal, from his high levels. And it's now going to permeate all of his Ramach Evarim. In this way, he's being mevatel his metzias. It's not focused on how great his seichel is. He's being mevatel. He's nullifying his metzias. It's specifically, this is the way that now the Torah of Hashem, which is completely infinite, should be able to become absorbed in a pnimius of the person, and that's why it's going to be mishtameres. The Torah is going to be guarded, it's going to be secure by the person. Says the Rebbe, now we can understand very well this Maimer Chazal. Mayim ein it doesn't have water, but there's nechoshim v'akrabim, there's snakes and scorpions. And we said that it means the moment there's no water, there's snakes and scorpions, and we asked, why is that? So the Rebbe explains, says the main point of Torah is the connection with the Nois and HaTorah with Hashem, which comes through the bittul of the person that's learning. Therefore, there's no room for anything in between. Either he has the bittul to the Nois and HaTorah, and then he's going to be mechaven his learning lamitasar shel Torah. That means when he learns, it's going to be aligned with the emes of Torah, how it is based on the will of Hashem, the giver of the Torah. But if chas v'shalom he's lacking the mayim, chas v'shalom he's lacking that bittul of Torah, then he's lacking the connection to the nois in our Torah. As we said before, with the kal v'chomer, from the elephant being able to go through the eye of the needle. And therefore, it's exactly the same like we said before about visartem will immediately be va'avadetem. As if he doesn't have that connection to the nois and Torah, then there will be the nechoshim v'akrabim, the snakes and scorpions. That means not only he doesn't have a shaychus to Torah, as the Chazal say, the Torah can't be found by those that are arrogant and haughty, but rather, with this he's actually opposing Kedusha. He's a menaga to Kedusha. As the Chazal say, that Hashem says, I cannot live together with the Balgaiva. And furthermore, it's as if he serves Avodah Zarah. Balgaiva says it's as if he served Avodah Zarah. It's as if he's koifer be'ikar, which is again similar to the va'avadetem that we said. Says the Rebbe, now we can understand what the Medrash is saying regarding the brothers of Yosef, that Nesroiken boire shel Yaakov ein by divrei Torah. What were they lacking? It wasn't that they were lacking chas v'shalom, the actual learning of Torah. And as we said before, they were of the opinion that Yosef, according to the halacha, was chayiv misa. But what they were lacking was, according to their level, they were lacking the idea of the mayim, the bitul that they should have had. And this is why their psak din was also not aligned to the way Torah, to the actual halacha of Torah. In regards to Einish of Yosef, they were not paskening in the right way. The Rebbe says, the stories of this parsha regarding the episodes that happened with Yosef and his brothers, of course, came as an introduction and what led to Golos and Yetzias Mitzrayim. The sale of Yosef led to Yaakov and his children coming down to Mitzrayim and so on. And ultimately, the goal of all of that being Matan Torah. Says the Rebbe, so the same thing in regards to this idea that we say that Mayim Ein Boy, but Nechoshim V'Akrabim Yesh Boy, that the Torah teaches in this parsha, is also relevant to the whole idea of Matan Torah, because we know that this idea of the Mayim Shebet Torah, the water of the Torah, the bittul that's needed by the person learning Torah to connect to the Nois and HaTorah, this mainly actually started by Matan Torah. The Rebbe explains the difference between the way the Avos learned Torah before Matan Torah and the learning of Torah of the children after Matan Torah is that before Matan Torah the learning was what's called B'koyach Atzmoi. It was what the Avos were able to achieve on their own. They were able to understand the Torah as much as a Nivra, created being, has the ability to grasp, to understand, and so on. The Chidush of Matan Torah was V'nasan lanu es Torah, so that it's Hashem giving the Torah as it's His Torah. Hashem's Torah, which we quoted before, Sha'ashoy HaMelech B'atzmusoi, Hashem's delight, so to speak, within Himself. And this is being given from Hashem to each and every Yid. As could also be understood from the Psak Din that every single Yid, every single day, has to say Birchas HaTorah, where we say these words, that V'nosan lanu es Torah, that Hashem gave us a Torah. Says the Rebbe, this also explains the Ma'amar Chazal that the Gemara says that originally Moshe Rabbeinu was learning Torah and he was forgetting it until Hashem gave it to him as a present, as a gift. And the question is, seemingly, how does this make sense? Before Matan Torah, they were also learning Torah. Chazal say that from the times of the Avos, they never stopped sitting and learning Torah. And it's obvious that they weren't forgetting what they were learning. Especially that otherwise you can't be referring to it as yeshiva. In other words, the whole idea is sitting and learning and remembering the Torah and so on. So how does it make sense that specifically after Matan Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu is now forgetting Torah? What's going on? But the explanation is that the learning of Torah before Matan Torah was again Torah as its be'erech to the creation. Torah as much as they were able to reach on their own, as we said, and therefore it could be absorbed in a pnimis. They could get it, they could remember it, and they could retain it. Where by Matan Torah, Hashem was giving Moshe Torah, Hashem's Torah, the way it's completely higher than creation. That which is something that a nivra, that a created being, cannot on his own, with his own koyach, actually absorb it, and that's why Moshe is learning it and forgetting it. Like we said before about this idea of Eino Mishtameres. Until Hashem gives it to him b'matana. Hashem that's kol yochel, that's able to do anything. He could connect the bli gvul and the gvul, the infinite and the finite. So he takes his Torah, which is completely unlimited, and gives it to Moshe Rabbeinu. We say kol anoisim bayin yafanoisim. When you give a gift, you're giving it all the way. He's giving it in a way of matana that's coming. How does a matana come? Not because you paid its value. In other words, it's coming completely from above. Hashem is giving it to a finite nivra. And the same is true regarding every single year. That the Torah of Hashem is absorbed in a pnimius, mishtameres. Only why? Because Hashem is giving it to us as a gift. Hashem is giving it to derech matana, so now we can accept it. Now, it doesn't mean we don't have to do anything. On the other hand, says the Rebbe, although the Yidden are taking the Torah from the koyach because of the noise in our Torah, but we still have to have what we spoke about before, the idea of the bitul, so that you should be able to keep the Torah as discussed before at length. Because since the whole purpose is that all things, even the greatest things, a person should take with some form of avoida, shouldn't be in what's called na'amad chsufa, bread of shame, something he didn't work for. Therefore, the person also has to do something from his part to make himself deserving, roy, at least to a certain degree, to absorb the Torah of Hashem, and that is how he leaves his mitzias, his hagbolos, to be able to tap in to this koyach of Hashem and to take the Torah that's bligvul. The Rebbe goes back now to the original part of the Sicha. According to this, we can now understand the connection of the Maimer Chazal, Mayim Ein Boy, and the idea of Chanukah, and we said that this is why the Gemara is bringing this idea of a haboy reik, mayim ein boy, in the sugya of Chanukah. It is known, says the Rebbe, the explanation of the lashon that we say in Va'ala Nisim, Sha'am the Malchus Yavan Harashah, that the evil Greek empire got up, Lashkicham Torah Secha, they wanted to make the Yidden forget Torah Secha, Hashem's Torah. What does this mean? That the Yevanim, the Greeks, wanted the Yidden to forget not the actual Chachma of Torah itself, the intellect of the Torah, or to take them away from learning Torah generally, but specifically make them forget that it's Torah Secha, that it's the Torah of Hashem. This is also the reason why they were metame, they contaminated all the oil in the Heichel. They didn't destroy the oil, they made it tummy. Why is that? Because Shemen represents this level of Chachma. And the Yevanim, the Greeks, agreed that the Yidden should have Shemen, meaning they should have Chachma, they should have the intellect of Torah to learn Torah. But they wanted it should be Tamei Chas V'Shalom. In other words, that it shouldn't be connected with Kedusha, with the holiness of Torah, with the noise in our Torah, that it shouldn't be Torah Secha, Hashem's Torah. This is one of the reasons, says the Rebbe, why Hashem makes a special miracle, that we should find a jug of pure oil. Even though technically, halachically, they could have used Tamei oil, there's a concept called Tumah Hutra B'Tzibur. If it's the whole congregation, the whole community Tamei, or there's no the oil is Tamei, they would be allowed to use the Shemen Tamei. Because the whole point of the victory of the war is this idea that it should be Torah Secha, to have pure oil. And this is why Hashem makes specifically that they should find the pure oil. And this is again similar to what we said before in regarding to this idea of Mayim Ein Boy, that it's specifically through the mayim of Torah, when you have that bitul to the noise in our Torah, that's when we ensure that there's no negativity, there's no nechashim va'akrabim. So just like we said that over there, similarly in the idea of Chanukah, that specifically through lighting the Neiros Chanukah with the pure oil, this is the way we come to Kal Yor Rigla de Tarmudoi. Just to explain briefly, the Gemara says that we light the menorah until Kal Yor Rigla de Tarmudoi, which simply is referring to certain people and they stop walking in the marketplace. But the word Tarmudoi, says the Rebbe, also, the word Tarmudoi, the word Tarmud is in the same letter as the word Moiredis, which means those that rebel. So, there are people that could rebel Chas v'Shalom against Hashem. So, as long as there's no Shem in Torah, as long as there's no pure oil, Torah Secha, there's still some room for this merida, for this rebellion, Moiredis against Hashem, like we said before, V'sartem, Va'avadetem. But it's when we light the menorah, Al Pesach, basing b'chutz on our doors, shining to the outside, we're illuminating the outside. So then Chal Yerigla the Talmudoi means we're getting rid of these people that are rebelling against Hashem, or the klippas that are rebelling against Hashem. And even, it says Chal Yerigla the Talmudoi and Ashuk from the marketplace. In other words, even those that are the furthest outside, we get rid of that completely. We get rid of the Moiredes, and even Rigla the Talmudoi, the feet of the Talmudoi, means the very lowest level. We completely get rid of all this negativity, and we illuminate the darkness of the Golos. And we bring down the Geula, Amitis Vashleima, Bekarev Mamish.